Morgana White arrives for her shift and is called a useless rookie by the chief physician, assigned to wipe down gurneys while the veterans handle the important cases. When a Navy SEAL team rushes in with a foreign operator in collapse, unable to speak a single word of English, 12 professionals try and fail, one after another. Military interpreters, specialists, senior doctors, while the man bleeds out, and no one can understand him. She watches in silence, tray in hand, invisible as always. Until the moment she sets the tray down, walks to the gurney, and begins to speak, Arabic, then Russian, then Pashto, with the precision of someone who spent years in places that don't exist on any map. What the SEALs are about to discover about the rookie will change everything they thought they knew about who had been standing among them all along. If this story already has you hooked, hit that like button right now. Drop a comment telling us where in the world you're listening from. And if you're new here, welcome to Secrets of Silent Badges. Subscribe and stay with us, because this is only the beginning. The chief physician did not look up when she walked in. He was signing forms at the nurse's station, expensive pen moving fast, jaw tight the way it always was when he had already decided something. "You're late," he said. Morgana White checked the clock on the wall. 6:58 a.m. "Shift starts at 7, Dr. Carver." He looked up then, slowly, the way people do when they want you to feel the weight of their attention. "Rookies show up early," he said. "Veterans show up on time. You're neither." He handed the clipboard to the charge nurse without looking at her again. "Put her on gurney rotation, bay 4 through 8. The charge nurse, Linda, gave Morgana a small, apologetic look. Morgana gave nothing back. She took the supply cart without a word and moved down the hall. That was fine. She knew how to be invisible. She had spent 11 years being exactly that. The Naval Medical Center sat 12 miles from the base, close enough that the sound of helicopters was ordinary background noise, like traffic in a city. The ER handled everything: dependent families, active duty personnel, contractors, the occasional civilian pulled in by proximity. It was not a glamorous posting. The walls were government beige. The lighting was fluorescent and indifferent. The equipment was good, but not exceptional. Morgana had requested this specific assignment. Nobody had asked why. She stripped the used linen from gurney 6 with practiced efficiency, bundled it, dropped it in the hamper, moved to gurney 7. The sheets here had dried blood on one corner, dark and stiff. She folded the corner in first so it would not drag on the floor. Small habits, old habits. Keep the workspace clean. Keep your hands occupied. Keep your eyes moving without appearing to. She noted the 2 security cameras in bay 4, the blind spot between bay 6 and 7, the supply closet with the broken latch that nobody had fixed in the 3 weeks she had been here. The trauma physician on shift today was Dr. Rains, competent, focused, unlikely to panic. The resident was new. She did not know him yet. She filed everything quietly and kept moving. Dr. Carver passed behind her at 7:24 without acknowledging her presence. She did not mind. She had long stopped needing acknowledgement from men like him. By 8:15, the morning had settled into its rhythm. 2 chest infections, 1 laceration, a dependent spouse with a possible fracture in her left wrist, X-ray pending. Morgana moved between bays, restocking, stripping, repositioning. The other nurses had their assignments. She had hers. She was refilling the saline shelf in bay 8 when she heard Linda's voice cut through the corridor. "Trauma incoming. Multiple. ETA 4 minutes." The energy in the room shifted the way it always does. Not panic. Something tighter than that. Controlled acceleration. Morgana set the saline bags down in order, moved her cart against the wall, stood to the side. This was not her call. She was on gurney rotation. She knew her place here. The ambulance bay doors opened at 8:19. Cold morning air pushed in from outside, carrying the smell of jet fuel and something metallic underneath it. 3 gurneys came through fast, paramedics talking over each other, clipped sentences, numbers, and pressures. The first patient was American. Caucasian male, mid-30s, shrapnel in the left shoulder, BP holding, conscious, grimacing but communicating clearly. Dr. Rains moved to him immediately. The second was also American, head wound, unconscious but breathing. The third stopped the room. He was dark-complexioned, compact, powerfully built beneath the shredded tactical gear. His face was contracted in an expression that was not quite pain and not quite fear, but something between the two. The expression of a man who could not make himself understood, and understood exactly how dangerous that was. His right thigh was wrapped in a compression bandage already soaked through. His lips were moving constantly. The words came fast and low and meant nothing to anyone in the room. Behind him came the SEALs, 4 of them, still in kit, rifles cleared but present. The one in front was the biggest, 6'4", at minimum, beard trimmed close, a scar running from his left ear to his jaw. He moved like a man who had never once in his life walked into a room without immediately knowing every exit. "This one needs a translator now," he said. "Not a request. He's been trying to tell us something since the vehicle hit. We don't know what it is. We don't know if it's medical." Dr. Carver had materialized from somewhere in the back. He straightened his coat, took the authority of the moment. "We have protocol for this," he said. "Linda, call the language line." Linda was already on the phone. Morgana watched from Bay 8. She had not moved. The man on the gurney kept talking. His voice was getting weaker. Not because he was losing consciousness. Because he was losing hope that anyone would answer. She recognized the language in the first 10 seconds. She kept her face neutral and said nothing. The language line put them through to an interpreter at 8:23. The interpreter spoke for 40 seconds, then stopped. "I'm sorry," the voice said through the speaker. "This is not standard Arabic. I cannot assist." Dr. Carver's jaw tightened. "Get me someone else." They tried a second interpreter at 8:26. This one lasted 30 seconds before admitting the same. The dialect was specific, regional, not something generalist interpreters carried. The SEAL with the scar, she had already noted his rank insignia, Senior Chief, stood at the foot of the gurney with his arms crossed and his eyes moving between the phone and the patient. He was not panicking either, but he was calculating. "How many of these language lines do you have?" he asked. "We'll find someone," Dr. Carver said. The man on the gurney reached out and grabbed the arm of the nearest paramedic. His grip was still strong. He said something urgent, 3 words, repeated. The paramedic looked helpless. Morgana heard the 3 words clearly from 12 feet away. She looked down at the saline bags on the shelf beside her. She straightened one that did not need straightening. By 8:34, they had tried 4 interpreters. A hospital volunteer with conversational Arabic, who apologized within seconds. A physician from radiology who spoke Farsi and tried, genuinely tried, and got close enough to cause more confusion than clarity. A contractor attached to the base who spoke Dari, and whose best guess was that the patient might be asking about a medication, but was not certain. 7 total by 8:41. Dr. Carver's composure was beginning to show cracks at the edges. He kept his voice level, but his pen had stopped moving. The senior chief had not moved from the foot of the gurney. He was watching everyone in the room with the systematic patience of someone who had learned that the most important information often came from unexpected directions. His eyes moved to Bay 8, to the nurse who had not moved in 20 minutes. To the nurse who was not looking at the patient but whose body had been angled precisely toward the gurney since the moment it came through the door. Morgana felt the attention land on her the way you feel weather changing. A slight shift in pressure. She did not look up. The patient said the 3 words again. Weaker now. 8 interpreters had failed. The compression bandage on his thigh was at capacity. Dr. Rains was preparing for intervention without information, working around the gap, doing what good physicians do. But the man's lips had not stopped moving, and whatever he was trying to communicate was still locked inside a language the room could not hold. Morgana set down the clipboard she had been pretending to review. She walked to the gurney. Not fast, not slow. Linda saw her first and started to speak. Morgana raised one hand, a small gesture, 2 inches of motion, and Linda went quiet, without knowing why. Dr. Carver turned. "What are you—" "Give me 30 seconds, Morgana said. She did not look at him when she said it. She was already at the patient's side, her eyes on his face, her posture changing in a way that was subtle enough that most people in the room would not be able to describe it afterward. Something in the set of her shoulders, something in the stillness of her hands. She leaned forward slightly and spoke. The words that came out of her were not English. They were not the Arabic the first interpreters had tried. They were something older and more specific, shaped by a region, by an elevation, by a particular valley system that most people in this building had never heard of and could not have located on a map. The man on the gurney stopped moving. His eyes found her face. For the first time since he had come through those doors, someone had answered him. He spoke, she listened, she spoke again. He answered, faster now, the relief in his voice physical, almost painful to hear. The room had gone completely silent. Dr. Raines was frozen with a gloved hand in the air. The senior chief had uncrossed his arms. Morgana listened for 40 seconds without interrupting. Then she turned to Dr. Raines with the calm of someone reading from a chart. "He has a known allergy to cefazolin," she said. "He received a dose in the field. He's been trying to tell someone for the past 37 minutes. He also says the bleeding started before the vehicle impact. There was a secondary wound on his left side, lower abdomen, that he covered himself in the field and did not tell his team about because he did not want to be pulled from the operation." Silence. Then Dr. Raines moved. Fast. The room came back to life around him, organized and urgent. Morgana stepped back from the gurney. She picked up her clipboard from where she had set it. She turned back toward Bay 8. "Hold on." The voice was low, controlled. It belonged to the senior chief. She stopped. She did not turn around immediately. When she did, his eyes were already on her. Steady. The kind of steady that took years to build and could not be faked. "What language was that?" he said. Morgana looked at him for exactly 1 second. "Southern Levantine dialect," she said, "with a specific regional inflection from the northern corridor." He said nothing for a moment. "Where did a gurney nurse learn that?" Morgana held his gaze. "I read a lot," she said. She turned and walked back to Bay 8. Behind her, she heard him exhale once. Quiet, thoughtful. She did not look back, but she felt it. The shift, the weight of a question that had just been asked without words and had not yet been answered. She had been here 3 weeks. She had been careful, and in 30 seconds, she had made herself visible in the one way she had promised herself she would not. The patient was going to live. That was the only thing that mattered right now. She told herself that, and kept moving. The fluorescent lights hummed above Bay 8, indifferent as always. Outside, somewhere past the ambulance ramp, a helicopter was approaching. She heard it before anyone else did. The helicopter landed at 8:54. Morgana heard the rotors change pitch before the radio crackled. That particular deceleration pattern, the way the sound compressed and flattened as the bird settled, was something she had memorized a long time ago in a place she did not think about during daylight hours if she could help it. She was restocking the suture cart in Bay 6 when the doors opened again. 2 more gurneys, different team. These operators were Army. She could tell by the kit. Different patches, different bearing, same controlled urgency that military men carry when one of their own is hurt, and they are not the ones who can fix it. One patient was ambulatory, arm in a field splint, walking under his own power and furious about being brought in at all. The other was not. This one was female. Early 30s. Compact. The kind of build that came from years of functional training rather than aesthetics. Her left leg was in a traction splint. Her face was pale in the specific way that indicated significant blood loss absorbed over time rather than acute hemorrhage. She was conscious, but her eyes had that middle-distance focus that Morgana recognized as the body rationing its resources. She was also not American. Morgana knew this before the team said a word. The bone structure, the coloring, the tattoo on the inside of the woman's right wrist. Small, geometric. A pattern specific to a region most people in this building would never visit. The army sergeant at the head of the gurney was already talking to Linda. She's a partner force asset. We've been operating with her unit for 6 weeks. She speaks zero English. We've been communicating through gesture, and one of our guys who has maybe 40 words of her language, and none of them are medical. Linda looked at the gurney, then at the sergeant, then, almost involuntarily, toward Bay 6. The sergeant caught the look. Is there someone here who— No, Dr. Carver said, appearing again from the direction of his office. He had a talent for materializing at moments of institutional authority. We will follow established protocol. Language line, then base interpreter services. We already tried base interpreter services on the way in, the sergeant said. They don't have anyone cleared for this dialect. It's not Dari, it's not Pashto. It's something regional, and our guy says it's close but not close enough for anything medical. Dr. Carver straightened his coat. Then we treat what we can see and document what we cannot confirm. That is the protocol. The sergeant stared at him for a moment. Not with anger. With the specific expression of a man who has spent years operating in environments where protocol is the thing you reach for after everything that actually works has already failed. He looked back at his asset on the gurney. She was saying something. Quiet, steady, not panicked. Reporting, the way trained people report. Facts, sequence. Information delivered without performance. Nobody in the room understood a word. Morgana had understood the first sentence. She kept her back to the gurney and counted the suture packets she did not need to count. This was not her assignment. She was on gurney rotation. Bay 4 through 8. That had been made clear at 6:58 this morning by a man with an expensive pen who had already decided what she was. She counted to 17. The woman on the gurney said something that changed in tone, not louder, tighter. The way a sentence changes when the information inside it becomes urgent. Morgana set the suture packets down. She did not decide to walk to the gurney so much as she stopped deciding not to. Linda saw her coming and stepped aside without being asked. The sergeant watched her approach with the neutral assessment of someone who had learned to evaluate people quickly and without sentiment. Morgana leaned over the gurney. She spoke 4 words. The woman's eyes snapped to her face. She answered immediately. Rapid, precise. The relief in her voice was not emotional. It was tactical. The relief of a soldier who had finally found a communication channel and was going to use it efficiently before it closed. Morgana listened, asked 2 questions, listened again. Then she turned to Dr. Rains, who had appeared at her shoulder without her hearing him arrive, which told her more about her current state of focus than she would have preferred. Traction splint is correct, but she says the fracture is not where they think it is. The pain is radiating from a secondary impact site approximately 4 centimeters proximal. She also has lower abdominal rigidity. She did not report to the team because she was not asked directly and did not want to compromise the mission timeline. She says it started approximately 90 minutes ago. She rates it 7 out of 10, but her baseline pain tolerance is high. Treat it as higher. Dr. Rains was already moving. Internal bleeding? Possible. She can't localize it precisely, but she's describing a pressure sensation that's been increasing. Get me an ultrasound. The room organized itself around the new information. Morgana stepped back and gave the space to the people who needed it. The sergeant was beside her before she cleared the gurney. How many languages do you speak? He said. The question was quiet. Not suspicious. Genuinely curious in the way that soldiers get curious. Efficiently, without decoration. Enough, Morgana said. That dialect is not something you learn in a classroom. No, she said. It isn't. She moved to step around him. He shifted slightly, not blocking her, just present. Ma'am, I'm not trying to complicate your morning. I just need to know if we can ask you to stay close while she's being treated, in case she needs to communicate something else. Morgana looked at the gurney. The woman was watching her from across the bay. When their eyes met, the woman gave a single nod. Small, precise. The nod of one professional acknowledging another. "I'll be in Bay 6, Morgana said. "If Rains needs me, he knows where I am." The sergeant nodded, stepped aside. Morgana walked back to Bay 6, picked up the suture packets, and continued counting. She made it to 11 before Dr. Carver appeared at the entrance to the bay. He stood in the doorway with his arms folded and looked at her the way a man looks at something he cannot categorize. "Where did that come from?" he said. "Where did what come from?" "Don't be obtuse. The languages. Both patients, 2 different dialects, within 40 minutes of each other. That is not something that happens." Morgana set the last suture packet in place. "It happened," she said. "I pulled your file this morning after the first one." He paused, letting that land. "Nursing degree from state. 2 years at a regional hospital in Georgia. 1 year at a clinic in Virginia. No international postings. No military service documented. No language certifications of any kind." Morgana said nothing. "That file," Dr. Carver said slowly, "does not describe what I just watched you do." She turned to face him. She kept her expression exactly where she wanted it. Neutral, slightly tired. The expression of a person who has been working since before 7 in the morning and would prefer to continue working. "People are more than their files, Dr. Carver," she said. His jaw shifted. "I'm going to need a fuller explanation than that." "And I'm going to need to finish restocking Bay 6, she said. 2 trauma patients in 30 minutes. We're short on suture supplies and someone used the last of the 4-nil Vicryl without logging it." She turned back to the cart. He stood in the doorway for another 10 seconds. Then his pager went off. He looked at it, looked at her, and left. Morgana exhaled once, slowly. The senior chief from the first team was still in the building. She had clocked him 20 minutes ago, standing near the family waiting area with a cup of coffee he had not drunk, watching the hallway that led to the trauma bays. He was not waiting for news about his operator. He already knew his operator was stable. He was watching the hallway for a different reason. She knew that look. She had worn it herself. It was the look of someone assembling a picture from incomplete pieces and getting closer to finished with every minute. She needed to be more careful. She needed to be invisible again. She looked down at her hands on the supply cart. They were steady, completely steady. They had been steady since the first patient came through the door. That was the problem. Invisible people did not have steady hands in a crisis. They flinched. They deferred. They looked for someone with a badge or a title to tell them what to do. She had not done any of those things. In 37 minutes, she had answered 2 patients in 2 different dialects, corrected 2 diagnoses, and made Dr. Carver uncomfortable enough to pull her personnel file before his second cup of coffee. 11 years of careful, 37 minutes of necessary. She picked up the empty supply bin and moved to the corridor. The senior chief was still there when she passed the waiting area. He did not say anything, but when she passed him, he tilted his coffee cup slightly in her direction. A small gesture. Old gesture. The kind of acknowledgement that people from a certain world gave each other when words were not the right tool. She did not respond, but she felt her jaw tighten once, briefly, before she controlled it. Down the corridor, the ultrasound machine was moving toward the bay where the woman with the fractured leg was being assessed for internal bleeding. The information Morgana had translated had gotten there in time. That was enough. That had to be enough. She turned the corner and kept walking. There are people in this world who are exactly what they appear to be. And then there are people like Morgana White. The question is, which kind are you more afraid of? She ate lunch alone at 12:11 in the small break room at the end of the east corridor. Vending machine coffee. Black. A sandwich she had made at 5:40 that morning and carried in a paper bag that was now slightly flattened on one side. She sat with her back to the wall and her face toward the door. Old habit. She had tried to break it once, years ago, at the suggestion of someone she trusted, tried sitting with her back to the room, to the entrance, to the unknown variables that might come through it. She lasted 4 minutes. Some habits do not break. They just go quiet. The break room had a window that looked out onto the parking lot. She could see the senior chief's vehicle from where she sat. Black government-issue SUV, parked at an angle that was not technically a parking space, but was positioned to have a direct sight line to the main entrance. He had not left. She took a bite of her sandwich and thought about that. Dr. Carver had not returned to Bay 6 after his pager pulled him away. But Linda had found Morgana at 10:30 with an expression that sat somewhere between concern and fascination, and said very quietly that the chief had made 2 phone calls from his office with the door closed, which he almost never did, and that one of them had lasted 11 minutes. Morgana had thanked her and gone back to work. Now she sat with her coffee and her sandwich, and the particular stillness of a person doing a calculation they already know the answer to. She thought about the first patient, his allergy, the 37 minutes of silence before she broke it. She thought about the look on the senior chief's face when she walked back to Bay 8. Not surprise exactly, but the recalibration of a man whose threat assessment model had just been revised. She thought about the woman with the fractured leg, who was now in imaging, stable, the internal bleed caught early enough to manage without surgical intervention. Good outcomes. Both of them. She should feel good about that. She finished her sandwich and folded the paper bag into a precise rectangle and placed it in the trash. Here is something worth considering. Most people, when they do something extraordinary, want someone to notice. It is human. The desire to be seen is not weakness. It is wiring. It goes back further than language, further than civilization. It is the thing that made early humans gather around fire instead of sitting alone in the dark. Morgana White had spent 11 years rewiring that instinct. She had been very good at it, until this morning. She picked up her coffee. The break room door opened at 12:23. It was not Linda. It was not Dr. Carver. It was the senior chief. He was carrying his own coffee now, a fresh one from the machine in the family waiting area, she noted, which meant he had been in the building long enough to finish the first one and decide to stay for another. He looked at her. She looked at him. He gestured toward the empty chair across from her with a courtesy that was genuine and also unmistakably non-optional. She did not stand. She did not reach for anything. She kept both hands visible on the table, which was its own kind of language. He sat down. For a moment, neither of them spoke. Outside, a supply truck was backing up to the loading dock. The beeping was distant and rhythmic, and had nothing to do with either of them. "Your patient is stable," he said, Itay. "They're saying the allergy flag saved his life. Whatever was in the IV line they had queued up would have sent him into anaphylactic shock within the hour." "Good," Morgana said. "The other one, the woman, they found a grade 2 laceration on the spleen. Caught it early. She's going to be fine. I heard." He nodded once. Took a sip of his coffee. "You've been here 3 weeks," he said. 22 days. "And before this?" "Virginia," she said. "Before that, Georgia." "Your file says that." "Then you already know." "Your file," he said carefully, "says a lot of things that don't account for what happened in those trauma bays this morning." Morgana looked at him over the rim of her cup. He was good at this. The stillness, the patience, the ability to sit with silence and not fill it with noise. That was not a natural skill. That was trained. She knew exactly what kind of training produced it. She knew because she had the same training. "What is it you're actually asking me?" she said. He leaned forward slightly, elbows on the table. The posture of someone who has decided to be direct because he has assessed that directness is the appropriate tool. "Southern Levantine dialect with a northern corridor inflection," he said. "That's what you told me this morning. You said it like someone reads coordinates off a map, not like someone who studied linguistics, like someone who learned it in the place it comes from." Silence. The second language. The woman's dialect. I had one of my guys listen to the recording from the trauma bay camera. He's been operating in that region for 4 years. He says what you spoke was not just the language. It was the specific register used by trained personnel in that area. Not civilians, not aid workers. Trained personnel. The beeping from the loading dock had stopped. The break room was very quiet. Morgana set her coffee cup down, precisely in the center of the napkin she had placed under it. Cameras have audio in trauma bays now, she said. This one does. New installation. Most of the staff doesn't know yet. She noted that. Filed it. Am I in some kind of trouble? She asked. And here is what you need to understand about that question. She already knew the answer. She was asking it for a different reason, to hear how he responded, what he prioritized, whether he reached for authority or for something else. He looked at her for a long moment. No, he said. You saved 2 lives this morning using skills that your personnel file says you shouldn't have. Nobody who matters is interested in causing problems for someone who just did that. But someone is interested in understanding it. Yes, he said simply. She looked at the window, at the parking lot, at the black SUV that was not in a parking space. I'm going to ask you something, she said, and I need you to answer it honestly. All right. The phone calls Dr. Carver made this morning, the ones with the door closed. She paused. Did anyone call you? Or did you make the decision to stay on your own? Something moved in his expression, controlled but present. He was surprised, not by the question, by the fact that she knew to ask it. My own decision, he said. She studied his face for 3 seconds. He was telling the truth. She had spent years reading faces in rooms where the wrong read cost lives, and he was telling the truth. She picked up her coffee. Then I appreciate you being direct, she said, and I appreciate what you said about your operator. She stood. He looked up at her from the chair, still patient, still assembled. That's it, he said. I have a shift to finish, she said. Morgana. She stopped. He had used her first name. Not her last name, not her title. Her first name. That was deliberate. She waited. Whatever is in that file that doesn't match what I watched you do this morning, he said quietly. It doesn't change what happened. Those 2 people are alive because of you. In the world I come from, that matters more than paperwork. She stood with her back to him for a moment. The loading dock had gone quiet. Down the corridor, someone was laughing, a real laugh, easy and brief, the kind that happened when a shift was going well and everyone knew it. In the world I come from too, she said. She walked out of the break room. She did not look back, but she heard him exhale behind her, slow and deliberate. The breath of a man who had just confirmed something he had suspected since 8:23 this morning. He knew she was more than what she appeared to be. He did not know how much more. Yet. And if you're listening to this right now wondering who she really is, what she did before the scrubs, before the file that doesn't add up, before 22 days in a naval medical center that she chose for reasons nobody thought to question, you are asking exactly the right question. The answer is coming, and it will change everything. The call came at 2:47 p.m., not to Morgana. She was not the kind of person calls came to. It came to the charge desk, and Linda took it. And whatever was said on the other end of the line made Linda set down her pen and stand up straighter in the way people do when the weight of a conversation changes midway through it. Morgana was passing the desk when it happened. She slowed without stopping. Linda hung up, looked at the corridor, looked at Morgana. Administration wants you, she said. 3rd floor. Director's office. Now. Morgana said nothing. She handed Linda the clipboard she was carrying and walked to the elevator. The director's office on the 3rd floor was a different world from the ER. Carpet instead of linoleum, filtered light through half-closed blinds, the particular silence of a place where difficult decisions were made slowly and documented carefully. There were 3 people in the room when she entered. Director Paulson, mid-50s. Administrative bearing, the look of a man who had spent 20 years managing things he did not fully understand and had made peace with that. He was behind his desk, and he did not look comfortable. To his left stood a woman Morgana did not recognize. Civilian clothes, but federal posture. The squared shoulders, the stillness. The way she had positioned herself with a sight line to both the door and the window. Dark jacket. No visible ID. And in the corner, arms folded, watching the room instead of the people in it, was the senior chief. Morgana stepped inside. Let the door close behind her. She looked at each face once briefly, and then chose a neutral point slightly above Director Paulson's left shoulder, and waited. "Thank you for coming up," Paulson said. He gestured toward a chair. She sat. "I'll be direct," he said, and then paused in the way people do when they have rehearsed being direct and are reconsidering it in real time. The woman in the dark jacket spoke instead. "My name is Calloway," she said. No title, no agency, just the name, dropped into the room like a stone into still water. "I'm here because of what happened in the trauma bays this morning. Both incidents." Morgana looked at her. "I understand 2 patients received critical information because of your intervention," Calloway said. "Information that required linguistic skills well outside the parameters of your documented background." "That's been noted," Morgana said. "Yes, it has." Calloway opened a folder on the side table without looking at it.
"What has also been noted is that the dialects you used this morning are not commercially taught. They are not available in any academic institution in this country. The only documented training programs for those specific regional variants operate under federal classification." The room was very quiet. Paulson was looking at the carpet.
The senior chief had not moved. "Is there something you'd like to ask me directly?" Morgana said. Calloway looked at her for a long moment. "We already know," she said simply. 2 words. Morgana kept her face exactly where it was. "We have known for 18 days, Calloway continued. "We were not certain until this morning, but we have suspected since day 3, when your patient intake methodology was flagged by a physician who noticed that your triage assessments were consistently faster and more accurate than your documented training should allow." Morgana thought about the resident, the new one she had not known yet. She revised that assessment now. He had not been new. He had been thorough. "So this is not a conversation about discipline," Morgana said. "No," Calloway said. "It is not." She closed the folder. "There is a situation developing," she said. 40 minutes from this building. It involves a personnel extraction that has been compromised by a communication failure at the coordination level. There are 3 individuals currently in a location that we can reach physically, but cannot reach linguistically. Our available assets are limited. Our time window is closing." Morgana said nothing. "We need someone who speaks what you speak," Calloway said. "The way you speak it." The air in the room sat still. Outside, somewhere below, the sound of the ambulance bay filtered up faintly through the walls. The ordinary noise of an ordinary afternoon in a medical center that had been anything but ordinary since 8:19 this morning. "I'm a nurse," Morgana said. "You are," Calloway said. "You are also the only person within operational range with the specific capability this situation requires." Morgana looked at the senior chief. He met her eyes. In 11 years, she had built something careful and deliberate and quiet. 22 days in a naval medical center. Paper bag lunches and gurney rotation and a file that said exactly what it needed to say. She had constructed invisibility the way other people constructed careers, with patience, with precision, with the understanding that the work was never finished, only ongoing. 40 minutes from this building. 3 people in a location that could be reached, but not spoken to. A closing window. "What's the timeline?" she said. Calloway looked at her watch. "We need to leave in 11 minutes." Morgana stood. She looked at Director Paulson, who was still looking at the carpet and would likely continue doing so for the rest of the afternoon. "Can someone tell Linda," Bay 7 needs checking before end of shift, she said. The chest infection. His oxygen numbers were borderline earlier. Paulson nodded without looking up. Morgana walked to the door. The senior chief fell into step beside her without being asked. She did not tell him not to. They walked to the elevator together. He pressed the button. The doors opened. They stepped in. The doors closed. He looked forward. She looked forward. For what it's worth, he said. I pushed for this. I know, she said. How? Because Calloway let you stay in the room, she said. People like Calloway don't let observers stay unless the observer is the reason the meeting happened. He was quiet for a moment. How long? He said. She knew what he was asking. 11 years, she said. The elevator opened on the first floor. They walked through the ER corridor. Linda saw them from the desk and opened her mouth and closed it again. The supply cart was still where Morgana had left it outside Bay 6. She did not stop. Through the ambulance bay doors and into the afternoon, where the black SUV that was not in a parking space was now running, a second vehicle behind it, both pointed toward the exit. She got into the first one. The door closed. The building she had spent 22 days making herself small inside grew smaller in the side mirror. She watched it until it was gone. Then she turned forward and began to prepare. The location was a warehouse. Not abandoned, actively used, which was worse. Active locations had schedules. Schedules meant variables. Variables meant the window Calloway had described was not a fixed thing, but a living one, contracting with every minute they spent in transit. Morgana learned this in the vehicle on the way there. Calloway sat in the front. The senior chief sat beside Morgana in the back with a tablet showing a floor plan that had been drawn from memory by someone who had been inside the building once, briefly, under duress. It was approximate. Approximations were what you worked with when precision was not available. 3 individuals inside. 2 of them were American contractors, communication specialists, taken during a routine equipment transfer that had gone wrong in the specific way that routine things go wrong when someone on the inside decides they are tired of being on the inside. The third was a liaison officer from a partner force. The same regional background as the woman from the trauma bay that morning. Different dialect branch, Calloway said. Close enough, in her assessment. Morgana did not correct her on the dialect. She looked at the floor plan. Single entrance on the east side. Loading dock on the west, currently blocked by a vehicle. 2 interior rooms divided by a partial wall. The individuals were being held in the rear room based on thermal imaging taken 40 minutes prior, which meant the information was already aging. What do they want? Morgana said. Leverage, Calloway said from the front. They don't know what they have yet. That's the window. How many inside? 4 confirmed, possibly 5. Armed. Yes. And our objective is communication, not extraction. Communication first, Calloway said. We have an extraction team positioned, but they cannot move until the individuals inside confirm their status and location verbally. The contractors have a signaling protocol, but the liaison officer does not share it. She is the variable. She doesn't trust the protocol, Morgana said. Calloway turned from the front seat. We believe she doesn't understand it, she said. She understands it, Morgana said. She doesn't trust the people delivering it. There's a difference. Silence in the vehicle. The senior chief was looking at her. She looked at the floor plan. I need to be the one who makes contact, she said. That is not the current operational plan, Calloway said. Your current operational plan assumes a language barrier, Morgana said. There isn't one. Not for me. Which means the variable you cannot account for is not linguistic. It's relational. She will not confirm to someone she has never heard before. She needs a voice she can assess. She needs to make her own determination about whether to trust it. And you think she'll trust you. I think she'll listen to me, Morgana said. Listening is the first step. Trust comes after. The vehicle slowed. They were 2 blocks out. Calloway turned fully in her seat now. The afternoon light through the windshield was behind her, putting her face in partial shadow. "Walk me through what you're proposing," she said. "Radio contact only to start. I speak to the liaison officer in her dialect, not the protocol, not yet. Something personal, something that establishes that the person on the other end of this radio is not reading from a script. And if she doesn't respond, she will." "You're certain?" Morgana looked at her. "I'm certain the alternative has already failed twice today," she said. "Once in your operational planning and once in a trauma bay at 8:19 this morning. I'm offering you a different approach. The decision is yours." Calloway held her gaze for 5 full seconds. Then she turned back to the front. "Senior Chief," she said. "Set it up." He already had the radio in his hand. The vehicle stopped half a block from the warehouse behind a utility truck that provided cover from the east-facing windows. The extraction team was on the west side, already in position, waiting on the signal that had not come. The senior chief handed Morgana the radio and a set of earpieces. She put them in, adjusted the frequency, held the transmit button for a moment without pressing it. She thought about the woman in the trauma bay that morning, the nod she had given across the bay when their eyes met. Small, precise. Professional recognition between people who understand what it costs to function in rooms that were not built for you. She pressed transmit. She did not use the protocol. She used a greeting, regional, specific. The kind of phrase that carries geography inside it. The sound of a particular altitude, a particular quality of light in the morning, a particular way that people in that part of the world open a conversation when they want the other person to know they are speaking to someone who has been there. Static. Silence. Calloway's posture in the front seat was absolutely controlled. The senior chief was watching Morgana's face. She waited. 12 seconds. Then a voice came back through the earpiece. Female. Steady. Cautious in the way that trained people are cautious, not afraid but precise, testing each word before releasing it. She said 3 sentences. Morgana felt something in her chest that she did not have a clean name for. The sensation of a frequency finding its match. The particular relief of being understood by someone who had no reason to trust the world that had delivered her to this moment. She answered. She spoke for 90 seconds without stopping. She did not use the protocol. She described the extraction team's position in terms that a soldier from that region would recognize as honest. Specific details that a fabricated reassurance would not include. She described the 2 contractors by name, which she had from the briefing. She said the window was closing and that the decision to trust or not trust was the liaison officer's to make, that no one was going to make it for her, but that the voice on this radio had spent the morning in a trauma bay, saving 2 people who looked like her, and that was the only credential she was offering. She released the transmit button. Silence. 19 seconds. Then the liaison officer's voice came back through the earpiece. Clear, decisive. Coordinates. She gave the coordinates of the room, the position of the individuals holding them, the number, 5, not 4. And the location of a secondary exit on the north wall that was not on the floor plan drawn from memory. Morgana relayed everything in rapid English to the senior chief, who was already transmitting to the extraction team before she finished her 3rd sentence. Calloway was on a separate line. The next 4 minutes were not Morgana's. She sat in the vehicle with the radio in her hand and listened to the controlled language of an extraction in progress. Brief transmissions, confirmations, the sound of a team that knew what it was doing moving through a space it now understood. No shots fired. All 5 individuals on the ground. Contractors confirmed. Liaison officer confirmed. Window closed at 4:31 p.m. Calloway lowered her phone. She turned in her seat and looked at Morgana for a long moment. "The dialect branch," she said finally. "You knew it wasn't what I described." "Yes," Morgana said, "and you didn't correct me." "You didn't need the correction to make the decision," Morgana said. "You needed a reason to make it. Those are different things." Calloway was quiet. Outside, the extraction team was moving the contractors toward a second vehicle. Through the window, Morgana could see the liaison officer being helped across the lot. She was walking, unhurt, her posture still military despite everything the last several hours had delivered to her. At the edge of the lot, the woman stopped. She turned. She looked directly at the black SUV. She could not see through the glass. She did not know which vehicle, which window, which person. But she raised her hand. Flat palm. Brief. The gesture of one soldier, acknowledging another, across a distance that language could not fully cross, but sometimes came close. Morgana did not raise her hand back, but her eyes stayed on the woman until the team moved her forward and she disappeared around the side of the building. The senior chief had been watching Morgana. 11 years, he said quietly. It was not a question this time. 11 years, she said. CIA, he said. She looked at him. She did not confirm it. She did not deny it. He nodded once, slowly. The nod of a man who had worked long enough in the world they both came from to understand that some confirmations were not his to receive. The vehicle started moving. Morgana looked out the window at the afternoon light moving across the buildings as they passed. She thought about 11 years of careful and 37 minutes of necessary, and what the distance between those two things actually cost. The medical center appeared ahead. She watched it come closer. This time she did not wonder what came next. She already knew. The walls were still government beige. That was the strange part. Morgana had expected something different when the vehicle pulled back into the lot at 5:12 p.m. Some visible shift in the architecture. Some acknowledgement from the building itself that the person stepping out of the black SUV was not quite the same person who had stepped into it 3 hours earlier. But the fluorescent light still hummed through the ambulance bay windows, and the supply cart was still outside Bay 6, exactly where she had left it. She walked through the ambulance bay doors. Linda was at the desk. She looked at Morgana the way people look at someone who has stepped out of a story they were not supposed to be part of, and returned wearing the evidence of it in the set of their jaw and the stillness of their hands. Bay 7 is fine, Linda said. Doctor, Rains checked him an hour ago. Oxygen's back where it needs to be. Good, Morgana said. She picked up the clipboard from the desk. 2 new patients in the last 3 hours. Both stable, both assigned, both covered. The afternoon had run without her. She moved toward the supply cart. Morgana. She stopped. It was not Linda's voice. She turned. Dr. Carver was standing at the entrance to the corridor. He had his coat on. End of shift, she noted, which meant he had stayed past his own hours. His arms were not folded. That was different. He was holding his coat closed with one hand at the front, the posture of a man who is cold somewhere that has nothing to do with temperature. He looked at her. She waited. I made some calls today, he said. Not the ones you think. He paused. I called the director of nursing at your last posting in Virginia. I was looking for inconsistencies, something to explain this morning. She said nothing. She told me, he said carefully, that in 14 months at that facility, you had the lowest patient complication rate of any floor nurse on staff. That you caught 2 medication errors that the attending physicians had signed off on. That when they offered you a senior position, you declined without explanation and submitted your transfer request the same week. Morgana held his gaze. She also told me, he continued, that the week before you left, there was an incident in the parking structure. A woman being attacked. Security footage shows the situation was resolved in approximately 40 seconds by a bystander in scrubs who did not file a report and was not identified on camera because she kept her back to the lens the entire time. The corridor was empty behind him. Somewhere in the building a monitor was beeping its steady, indifferent rhythm. I was not looking for the right things, Dr. Carver said. This morning, I saw a file that didn't match what I was watching and I made it about me, about my department, about what it would mean if someone had been placed here without my knowledge. He stopped. He seemed to be locating something inside himself that did not come naturally to him. "The two patients from this morning," he said. "I spoke with Dr. Rains an hour ago. He walked me through both cases. The allergy flag on the first patient, the splenic laceration on the second." He paused. "If those cases had proceeded without your intervention, we would have lost the first patient before noon, and the second would have required emergency surgical intervention with a significantly compromised outcome." Morgana said nothing. "I owe you an apology," he said. The words landed in the corridor and sat there. She looked at him. The expensive pen was in his coat pocket, the cap visible above the edge. The same man who had handed a clipboard to Linda at 6:58 this morning without looking up. The same man who had told her she was neither a rookie nor a veteran with the easy certainty of someone who had never once been wrong about another person in a way that cost anything. "You were working with the information you had," she said. "That's generous." "It's accurate," she said. "The file was designed to produce exactly the response you had. That's not your failure. That's the point." He looked at her for a moment, processing that. "Are you staying?" he said. She looked at the supply cart outside Bay 6. She thought about the particular sound of a language being recognized in a room full of people who do not speak it, the way a person's face changes when someone finally answers. Not gratitude exactly, something older than gratitude. The relief of being heard. "I don't know yet," she said. It was the most honest thing she had said all day. He nodded once, turned to go. She watched him walk down the corridor until he disappeared around the corner. She picked up the supply cart and moved it back to the storage alcove. She was checking the inventory log when the ambulance bay doors opened at 5:34 p.m. Not a gurney this time. The senior chief walked in. He was out of kit, civilian clothes, a gray jacket, moving the same way he always moved, which was the same regardless of what he was wearing. He carried 2 cups of coffee. He held one out toward her. She looked at it, took it. They stood in the alcove next to the supply cart with their coffee and the inventory log between them like the world's most unlikely common ground. "Calloway wants to talk to you," he said. "Formally, not today. She said she'll give you a week." "A week for what?" "To decide what you want to do." Morgana looked at the inventory log. 3 boxes of 4-sil Vicryl. Someone had restocked it while she was gone. "What's she offering?" Morgana said. "Officially a consulting role. Translational support for high-complexity situations. You'd be attached to this facility as cover, but the actual function would be broader." "And unofficially?" He was quiet for a moment. "Unofficially?" he said. "She said to tell you that what you did today, both things, the trauma bays and the warehouse, cannot be done by anyone else in our current inventory. That's her word. Inventory." He paused. "I don't love the word either. But the situations will keep happening. The language barriers will keep costing us. The windows will keep closing before we can get the right person in position." He looked at her. "You've been running for 11 years. "I haven't been running," she said. "I've been choosing. What's the difference?" She thought about that. "Running," she said, "is when you leave because you can't stay. Choosing is when you leave because you've decided something else matters more. And what did you decide mattered more?" She looked at the ambulance bay doors. "Quiet," she said. "I decided quiet mattered more." He nodded, didn't push it. They drank their coffee in the alcove next to the supply cart. After a while, he said, "The liaison officer asked about you. When she was being processed, she asked if the voice on the radio was a soldier." Morgana looked at him. "What did they tell her?" "They told her yes," he said, "because nobody could think of a more accurate word." The fluorescent lights hummed. Somewhere past the ambulance bay, the evening was coming in slowly, the way evenings do when the day has been too full to end cleanly. Morgana set down her coffee cup. She reached into the pocket of her scrubs. She placed something on the inventory log between them. He looked down. It was a pin, small, nondescript to anyone who did not know what they were looking at. A specific design, a specific agency, a specific level of operational clearance represented in a piece of metal small enough to hide in a closed fist. She had carried it for 11 years, not out of sentiment, out of something more complicated than that. The way soldiers carry things from wars that are technically over, but never quite finish. He looked at it for a long moment. Then he looked at her. "That doesn't mean what I think it means," he said. "Not a question. A hope, maybe." "It means," she said, "that I'm tired of carrying it in my pocket." She picked up her clipboard. She walked back to the corridor. She did not pick the pin back up. She left it on the inventory log next to 2 cups of coffee and 3 boxes of 4-0 Vicryl that someone had restocked while the world outside this building was doing the things it does when nobody is watching. At 6:01 p.m. she clocked out. She changed in the locker room, folded her scrubs with the precision of someone who had folded things under pressure in places where neatness was not optional. She was almost to the exit when Linda caught her. "There's someone asking for you," Linda said. "At the front desk. She came in about 20 minutes ago. She said she would wait." Morgana stopped. She doesn't speak much English," Linda said. "But she said your name, clearly. She said it like she had been practicing it." Morgana turned. She walked to the front desk. The woman sitting in the chair by the entrance was the liaison officer from the warehouse. She was still in the clothes she had been wearing when the extraction team brought her out. She had a bandage on her left forearm that had not been there this morning. Her posture was military despite the plastic chair and the fluorescent light and the complete incongruity of the situation. She stood when Morgana came into view. They looked at each other across the waiting room. The liaison officer reached into the inside pocket of her jacket. She produced a folded piece of paper. She held it out. Morgana crossed the room and took it. She unfolded it. It was a photograph, old, slightly creased at the corners. It showed 2 women in military gear, standing in front of a vehicle in a landscape that was unmistakably the region. Both were squinting into the sun. Both were armed. Both were young in the way that people are young before certain things happen to them. One of them Morgana did not recognize. The other one she did. She looked up from the photograph. The liaison officer pointed to the unrecognized woman in the photo. Then she placed her hand flat on her own chest. Her mother. This was her mother. And the other woman in the photograph, the one Morgana recognized, was Morgana's own handler, the woman who had recruited her, trained her, run her for 6 years in places that don't exist on any map. The woman she had last seen 11 years ago, in a room in a building that officially did not exist. The woman who had told her, on the last day, that the work they had done together would continue in ways neither of them would be able to see or measure, and that this was not failure. This was how real work moved through the world. The woman who had died, officially, in a non-incident, in a non-location in a year that had no official record. Morgana stood in the fluorescent light of a naval medical center waiting room holding a photograph of 2 young soldiers squinting into the sun. The liaison officer said one sentence, in her dialect, quiet, deliberate. Translated. It meant, "She said if we ever found you, we should tell you the work is not finished." Morgana looked at the photograph for a long time. Then she folded it carefully along its original crease. She placed it in the pocket of her jacket. She looked at the liaison officer, and for the first time all day, all 11 years, Morgana White smiled. It was not a large smile, not the kind that fills rooms or ends movies. It was small and specific, and it belonged to a person who had just understood something that had been waiting 11 years to be understood. The work was not finished. It had simply been waiting for her to stop pretending she had left it behind. She looked at the exit. Then she looked back at the liaison officer. "Are you hungry?" she said. The woman blinked. She had understood enough. She nodded. They walked out together into the evening. The pin was still on the inventory log in the storage alcove next to the supply cart. The senior chief found it at 6:47 p.m. when he went back to finish his coffee. He picked it up. He held it in his palm for a moment. Then he smiled. Slowly. the way people smile when a story turns out to be longer and better than they expected, and placed it carefully in his jacket pocket. He had a feeling she would need it back. He had a feeling it would not be long. The end. If this story moved something in you, if Morgana's quiet strength, her 11 years of carrying what others never saw, hit you somewhere real, hit that like button right now and let us know. Drop a comment telling us where in the world you're listening from tonight, because these stories travel farther than we ever expect, and every single comment reminds us why we keep telling them. If you're new here, welcome. You found us at exactly the right moment. Subscribe to Secrets of Silent Badges and stay close, because the people who change everything rarely announce themselves. They carry supply carts. They fold their scrubs with precision. They leave pins on inventory logs and walk out into the evening with someone who needed them. And somewhere out there, right now, another silent badge is waiting to be found.